When it comes to the publishing process, I don't think there's anything I hate more than having to self-edit my own books, and unfortunately, it is inevitable. Hey team, happy Monday and welcome back to Building a Book. This is week 7 of a 12-week series all about my process of self-publishing my next big release, which is Into the Void, the first book in a new adult sci-fi series that I am planning to put out into the world. This week we are talking about probably my least favorite part of all of this, and that is the editing process, specifically self-editing, just going back into that first draft that you've already finished and making it stronger. For some reason, this is always the part that I dread. It is so difficult, but usually worth it in the end, so let's jump in. For me, a lot of that initial editing process actually happens while I'm still writing the first draft. I figure out things that I need to change, or things that just aren't working the way I want them to, or things that need to be deepened as I'm writing stuff later on in the book. So instead of editing as I go along, I just have kind of a master list of all the things that I want to go back in and change once I'm finished with this draft and start back at the beginning. For Into the Void, this was some like character name changes and like sci-fi details I needed to add, or things that were just kind of going too easily for the characters that I need to go back and make more intense. There were probably about 10 to 15 medium to major things I needed to change, a few kind of minor ones that I had to make a bunch of different changes throughout the whole manuscript, and then anything else I did just let myself go in and change really quickly if it was something I could do in like 10-15 seconds. If it was something I could do in like 10 or 15 seconds, I just did it so it was out of the way and I didn't have to worry about it earlier because editing was going to be enough of a hassle already. So if something was in my head and I was already kind of involved in the story and I knew what needed to be different, those things I changed. Anything else I saved for later. Once I got to the second draft of my story, this is where I started sharing what I had with some of the Patchwork Press interns, who were essentially acting as beta readers or developmental editors. So I had 3 people going through at this stage and basically pointing out anything that didn't make sense, or character inconsistencies, or kind of jumping in for those really weird typos that just didn't make any sense at all and kind of needed to be clarified before they could move forward. So this stage really went a long way for getting new eyes on this manuscript and making it as strong as it could be before I send it off for my first round with my actual editor, which always feels so good because I know at this point I really have some page-by-page guidance for what needs to be different. In terms of self-editing tips, the best one I have is probably one you've heard a lot, and that is to give yourself some space between finishing that first draft and jumping in to kind of get back in there and fix things in the story. You need that distance to see things more clearly. For me, this tends to be pretty difficult because I'm usually on a time crunch, but I do try to give myself at least a week before jumping back into chapter 1. The editor that I'm working with on this series typically does 3 passes on each of my manuscripts. The first one is that beta reading pass, which is similar to what the Patchwork Press interns were doing, going through and making sure there weren't any major plot holes or things that needed to be changed before we could really start working with the manuscript on a line-by-line level. But that is what we're going to be talking about next week, really getting that manuscript polished and ready to go out into the world with all of the line editing and proofreading stuff that I'm no good at all and have to trust professionals for 110% of the way. But it means you are in that final stretch and I am so excited to get there. So that is it for me today. Happy reading, happy writing, and I'll see you next time.